The Craig Fahle Show on Deadline Detroit is made possible in part by Lynette's Shrimp House, located in Highland Park. It's Metro Detroit's premier destination, serving juicy fried shrimp, fish, and wings, alongside soul food sides and new additions to the menu like turkey tacos and desserts. Located at 13548 Woodward in Highland Park, just north of the Davidson, Lynette's is open for takeaway, noon to 8 Tuesday and Thursday, noon to 10 p.m. Friday and Saturday, and noon to 5 p.m. on Sunday. Call now, get some Lynette's. Hello, everybody. Happy Friday. Welcome to the week that was on Deadline Detroit. I am your host, Craig Fahle. Glad to have you with me today. And we are going to break down the big stories of the week with this week's panel, including, of course, Allan Lengel, the editor and co-founder of Deadline Detroit. Hello, Allan.
Hello.
Nancy Derringer, Deadline Detroit contributor, is with us once again. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And you notice if I'm looking down at the screen here, it's like the Brady Bunch here with all these different people on top. Also, welcome back to Joel Sklar, of course, local attorney. It's a pleasure to have you here with us, sir.
Pleasure to be here.
And Adolph Mongo, who is the host of his own program on AM 910 Superstation, Saturdays from 10 to noon, a longtime political consultant as well. Adolph, welcome back.
Yeah, thanks.
All right. Well, we're going to do things a little bit differently this week because I want people who are watching or listening right now to know that coming up later on in the program, we will have our nominees for Schmuck of the Week. But given what's happened this week, I thought it would be important to open the show with the Schmuck of the Month award. And it has to go to none other than Texas Senator Ted Cruz. I almost feel bad for this guy, but I don't. Because if you could mishandle a situation like what's happening in Texas worse than Ted Cruz, I'd like to figure out how. I'm not sure you can. I understand the urge to escape to Mexico when the weather is chilly in Texas. But man, you are a public servant. Your state is suffering. Now is not the time to go, and it's certainly not the time to lie about it. And boy, did he get caught lying about it. There's so much to get into here. Nancy's laughing at this.
I didn't think Twitter could be better than the day after Rush Limbaugh died. And yet
we're going to talk about him a little bit later on. But
yeah, I know. It outdid itself this week with Ted Cruz. I mean, it's just been one laugh after another. And I have to say, I mean, he's widely known in Washington and elsewhere as the guy that everybody despises, right? And he's, the punchable face thing. He's got the intellectual superiority, combined with a total lack of empathy for anybody other than himself and his terrible family, and then there's the bootlicking and ass kissing of the president, who actually directly insulted his wife. All these things that make it, that show just what a greasy piece of crap he is. And then we find out that even his neighbors can't stand.
Well, and we'll talk about that in a second. But I mean, the one thing that Donald Trump did get right, he called him Lying Ted.
Yeah,
and he was caught lying this week. He threw his own daughters under the bus as an excuse for why he was going down to Cancun.
A guy who uses his own little girls as a human shield. I mean, how can you not?
Well, that's the reason he had them.
Yeah.
Well, I want to ask Adolph about this for a second, because this is the kind of thing, Adolph, that seems to me that could definitely derail his visions for the presidency someday. For all the other things that he has done, and he has been our Schmuck of the Week nominee, I don't know how many times over the course of the last couple of years. But this is the thing that ordinary people see and go, you know what? This is why I don't like this guy.
Well, anytime, like Nancy was saying, you let Donald Trump call your wife ugly, said your father was an assassin, he was part of the conspiracy to kill Kennedy, and that basically he wasn't qualified to be president because he was born in Canada. Now, this Donald Trump saying all that, and yet he kissed Donald Trump ass like he was a proctologist in a doctor's office. And I call him Raphael. That's his name. He has to know. He needed. Where did he come from? We need to send him back to Cuba. Since he want to send all the Mexicans back to Mexico. If I was the Mexican government, I wouldn't even let him in Mexico. I think he's dead on arrival. Nobody's going to forget this. Just like Christie and Bridgegate and all the other things that he did while governor, it's just gonna just kill his political career.
But the one thing that, remember, you mentioned Chris Christie. The one thing that really stuck with people, yeah, Bridgegate was bad, but the thing that really pissed him off was when he was sitting on that beach after he'd closed down all the beaches because of this government shutdown in New Jersey. That's the little thing. Again, these guys talk about elitists all the time, and then they do the exact things that the rich people get to do, which is escape Texas in the freezing cold and go down to some $300 a night resort in Cancun.
It's just like when Newt Gingrich dogged out Clinton for having an affair with Monica Lewinsky, and find out that Gingrich served his third wife, who just had cancer surgery, with divorce papers while she was recovering from the surgery. Listen, all hypocrites. Most of these Republicans, especially today, they have no morals. And the bottom line is, while people were dying in their cars, dying in their houses, no water, no food, Ted Cruz was sitting on the beach in Cancun, enjoying life with his daughters. He was bonding.
Well, he was escorting them. He was escorting them.
I have a question. Is that we see it used to be there were fatal things in political careers, and then Donald Trump came along and did everything. I mean, could we ever have had a president who had a candidate who had an affair with a porn star, who cheated on all three of his wives, who had that Billy Bush tape? I mean, they were all disqualifiers for anyone else. And the question is, are we in a new political phase, or was Trump just really an aberration?
I think the aberration thing, I mean, well, go ahead, Nancy.
I would only just point out that for all of Donald Trump's misbehavior, there was a hardcore of people who genuinely liked him. Okay. And I just don't think that's their Cruz. I mean, they just, he doesn't have a base, because I think people have seen he won't stand by anybody. He'll if you'll throw your 10 and 12-year-old daughters under the bus, what are you going to do for just any old average constituent? And that's the other thing. I mean, he could have made himself of great service this week in Texas, even if all he did was just do some press availabilities. I mean, he could have at least pretended to be doing something. And there's a lot that he could have done for for his constituents, but
that's what's been pissing me off, though, is that people have been saying, well, what's a senator really going to do in that situation? And I'm like, well, you know what? You could have done what AOC did, your arch nemesis, right? The arch nemesis of the right was actually on the phones and raised $1 million for relief for Texas just by using her contacts in New York the other day to send help down there. That's something Ted Cruz could have been doing, Joel, but he chose.
Wasn't Beto O'Rourke also helping out? I thought he was doing some very positive things during this disaster.
Sure.
So absolutely, Cruz is an asshole. That's what he's known at, and that's what he's good. He's always going to be an asshole. You don't change your character; it's characterological.
Asshole to the bone, man.
It is.
But Cruz,
get that tattooed.
Just to follow Allan, is the threshold lower because Trump has eviscerated it, or are we going to go back to that traditional, way we look at politics? What Cruz has done is being fatal. I don't know if anything's fatal anymore. That's what concerns me, because the bottom and the rules and the thresholds and the parameters have been so obliterated for the last 5 years. I don't know if I hope it sticks, because the guy's an asshole and should be doing what he's doing. But I'm worried about that. I think the threshold is I don't know what the hell it is anymore.
Well, Cruz joined the other two stooges in Texas, the governor, Greg Abbott, and the former governor, Rick Perry. The three stooges, monkey see, monkey do. So he was just following their role in saying, we don't need the federal government. Our people in Texas are strong. They're willing to die for a cause. What cause?
Well, okay. Remember the RNC head in Texas? I'm trying to remember his name. The head of the Texas Republicans, but he several months ago floated the idea of secession for Texas. And I'll tell you what, if you take a look at what has happened in Texas as a result of this cold snap and the way that their state has responded, good luck, Texas. And now you're begging for federal help. That's the thing that bothers me the most, is like, we're independent. We can do this on our own. We don't need the rest of America. Oh, hey, by the way, can you help us out? This is what deregulation and trying to sit there and say you're independent does. It leads to a situation like they're looking at right now, and it is awful. down there. I've heard from some people who live down there that are telling me it is just their pipes are bursting in the ceiling. Their pipes are bursting under the house. They don't have any energy because they didn't winterize any of their equipment because they didn't want to follow federal regulations. Texas is basically looking like a failed state at the moment.
It's a third world. Yeah, it has a third world energy grid.
Don't you think it's amusing though that they're actually taking drawing electricity from Mexico? You know, I think that is just
they going back home. They might ask Mexico, could they rejoin Mexico?
Well, you know, and good on Mexico for helping out, though. I mean, you know, despite all the crap that they get from the Republican Party about, you know, Mexicans and all the racist things we've been hearing over the last several years, the fact that Mexico is reaching out a helping hand is a big deal right now.
They're generous people. Thank God for Mexico.
But, you know, I'm looking at Texas, though. The one place in Texas that's not having problems is El Paso. El Paso did not get on this sort of libertarian mindset that the rest of the state did. They stayed on the Western U.S. grid, followed all the regulations. El Paso has power. They haven't lost power. People are able to heat their homes. That one little section of the state decided that they wanted to latch onto the rest of the U.S. instead of the Texas deregulated system. They don't have any problems. And now you've got a situation where hotel rooms in El Paso are on Airbnb and places like that and Travelocity for like $2,000 a night. Free enterprise.
Free market.
I mean, it's just, I'm witnessing it, and part of me wants to laugh, but I feel genuinely bad for the people who live down there because they are not made for this kind of stuff. They're just not equipped, and it's been a long snap.
I do too, and I feel bad for them. And I realize that the people who are down there now suffering have little to do with my particular grudge against Texas, besides all the stuff that we've already talked about, their yeehaw spirit and, you know, we're going to secede and all that. Remember in the early 80s when the auto industry was on its knees and people were fleeing Michigan and they were hoping to find work in Texas. And of course, it ended up in this. They ended up in practically these Hooverville camps down there, and they referred to Michiganders as black tag people. And they were the black tag people because the license plates at that time, you older dudes are going to remember this, were black with, I believe, gold letters. And the favorite bumper sticker among that crowd in Texas was "Let them freeze in the dark." And so my feeling is, hey, what goes around comes around. It took 40 years, but it did.
There's a lot of Northerners, Easterners down in Dallas, Houston, Austin now. That's why I think at some point we're going to see a blue state. I think it's like Northern Virginia.
Oh.
Where Northern Virginia eventually helped turn the state blue.
Well, I like when Abbott blamed the new Green Deal that doesn't exist yet.
Yeah, that was fabulous. And said, well, this is what's going to happen if we go down the road of the Green New Deal. But the systems that are failing, it's only 15 to 20% of their energy supply is from solar or wind. And the fact is, we have solar and wind up here that are still operating in the cold because they are weatherized.
You can look across Lake St. Clair; those things are turning. You know, the ones in Canada and the ones
had Texas stayed on the U.S. grid and not tried to avoid regulation. Federal regulations mandate that you make these systems ready for this kind of stuff. They were close to a catastrophic failure, a lot closer than they have been willing to admit. And it's just now coming out in the last couple of days just how badly managed this has been. And it's the natural gas systems and the heating oil systems that are also failing down there. So and coal. This is not just a problem with alternative energy sources.
Not even.
Yeah, and people are tearing down, I guess, their cabinetry in their homes to build fires. I just read in the New York Times.
Really?
Yeah, they're stripping their homes so they can stay warm. I mean, it is insane.
Think about it, though. You live in a place where you don't have a lot of insulation in your home, not like winterized stuff like we have up here. You don't have systems that are made for it. You got maybe some baseboard heaters or some electric stuff. No power, no heat. It gets cold real fast. There's no water.
Is climate change going to make this something that's going to happen a whole bunch? Isn't that what's going to be going down now? Isn't this another manifestation of the climate change and
how ironic that it should be happening in Texas, which had that catastrophic hurricane a few years ago, not too long ago, with 30 inches of rain.
Yeah,
30 inches of rain, and that's when we discovered that Yeehaw, Texas, had allowed developers to build housing inside a reservoir. You know, the reservoir was low and was low for a few years, and so of course it's always going to be low. And then suddenly, this lake fills up, and it's engulfing whole houses that are built not just in the floodplain, but actually in the lake. So,
well,
I'm surprised Texas didn't do what they did to the refugees from Katrina, put thousands of people in the Astrodome. That's what they did for the people of New Orleans. Yeah. Now they can do that to those folks there if they don't want to deal with the government. The bottom line is they have let people die. This is unbelievable that none of these people are going to face the music. We got hundreds of people are dying. People don't have water. People don't have a place to stay. And I think that the hotel industry, Marriott's, the Hiltons, they should be opening up their rooms for a lot of these folks in these areas that's hard hit. Yep. But you don't have leadership. Who's leading Texas right now? It's not Ted Cruz. It's not the governor. It's not the other senator. It's not their congressional delegation. There's nobody. It's like the what is it? The inmates are running the asylum right now.
Well, and I'm not exactly sure I want to trust somebody like Louis Gohmert to handle these kinds of things.
He's a genius.
Go ahead, Allan.
Louis Gohmert.
Talk about displaced blame. Talk to some Republicans and they're like, yeah, we're paying more gas now that Biden's killed the pipeline. And I'm like, wait a minute, that pipeline hasn't been opened yet.
Exactly.
It's amazing how, I mean, a lot of people, but the Republican Party has such a hard time accepting responsibility.
And accepting reality.
Yeah, exactly.
Just basic reality, what's really happening.
And once again, and this is something I complain about all the time, they're also failing at their basic role of governing. They're not good at it. They're really good at complaining, but they're really bad at governing.
That's actually going to come up during my Schmuck of the Week, so I'll start drafting my short speech.
Okay, very good. Well,
but you forgot to mention the mayor of a small town.
Oh, wait. That he's going to be my Schmuck. So so that one's coming up. So hold your powder, Adolph, because that's one we're going to definitely want to get to. Allan, you've got some microphone problems that we're going to have to address real quick.
Can you hear me?
Now we can, yes.
Okay. I was saying the Facebook.
Now we can't. So we're going to have to.
How about now?
Yeah, well, sort of.
All right.
You're causing me to do a lot of edits to the audio version of this.
Okay. All right. I'm
just kidding.
On the computer here. Maybe I'll switch computers.
All right. You go ahead and do that, and we'll get back to you in just a second. Right. Thanks, Allan. Appreciate it.
Right.
But anyway, so yeah, Adolph, definitely he's going to be one of my nominees for Schmuck of the Week. And trust me, everybody, you want to wait for this, because when you hear what this guy actually said, I'm sorry, you'd think that this guy thinks he's Davy Crockett or something like that. It's ridiculous. I'm sure he's killing and eating his own food right now. All right, so let's get back to some other subjects that we have here and some things that we want to get to, because there's a lot going on. Let's talk Rush Limbaugh for just a second. Not just a second. Rush Limbaugh passed away this week. He was 70 years old. I would have thought he was a lot older than that, given how long he's been a staple on the radio scene. And, I want to preface this with something. I posted on Twitter the other day. I just said, look, I'm going to have some things to say about Rush Limbaugh on Friday. And one of my conservative friends said, well, if you basically say anything other than you wouldn't have a job or a career without this guy, then you're disingenuous. And yes, he was a pioneer in talk radio. He was somebody that was incredibly important to growing the format. And he stylistically was light years different than I am in my approach to these sorts of things. But I can say that this is a guy that was not good for our discourse in this country. This is a guy that famously told his listeners to not read the news, that he would do it for them and then tell them what was in it. He weaponized ignorance. And that is what has led us to where we are right now. And I'm sorry, they say don't speak ill of the dead, but this man did not contribute to the overall wellness of America.
Did Rush Limbaugh ever fail to not speak or to speak ill of the dead? Because I remember him doing that all the time. And I don't, this is why I feel zero zero guilt or regret over trashing Rush Limbaugh. From the day he was born until.
I agree. He was he fed on hate, he fed on grievance. He gave birth to what the Republican or Fox News, whatever he gave birth to, this agenda of hatred and anger and grievance that is now in our bloodstream, as a nation, and it's a dangerous bloodborne disease, and he gave birth to it. I remember back in the day, my former in-laws, and there's maybe a reason why they're my former in-laws, they loved Rush. They were ditto heads. We'd have Thanksgiving dinner and it would erupt. I think the guy's he's an ass and he's an idiot. He's speaking. He's just like Trump. He goes to the base, of what we are, to the need to vent, to hate, to grieve, and he gave life to things that ought not have been given life to, and sustain them. And for that's unforgivable. And that's unforgivable.
He joins my Mount Rushmore of hate. Him, George Wallace, Theodore Bilbo, Bull Connor. These folks are hate mongers. No, listen, chicken coming home to roost. Those assholes that was on Fox basically crying, talking about how much they love this hate monger, this anti-Semite, this guy who smokes cigars and says smoking doesn't cause cancer. He died of lung cancer. Who said that the coronavirus was nothing? It's just like the flu,
like the cold.
Yeah, it was a head cold. Yeah.
Well, yes, and this guy sits up there, and when he dies, oh my, he's dead. Well, it reminds me of when the Wicked Witch of the West died. Ding dong, the witch is dead. The Wicked Witch. Yeah.
What's going, is that Trump gave him the Medal of Freedom, right?
Yeah. That
to me was, it was galling because the guy is divisive, polarizing. Typically, goes somebody who's universally loved.
He was our version of Joseph Goebbels.
That's true.
But the weird thing about him, though, was to watch sort of the transformation from this guy at the beginning. At the beginning, he cloaked his racism and his sexism and his xenophobia in humor at the beginning, right? He would do like his special alerts, his climate alerts and all these sorts of things. And it was when he first started out, you'd listen to the program and he was like, okay, I disagree with him, but he's kind of funny. But then you start realizing as he goes on throughout his career in these 30, 40 years that he's been doing this, to just being this bitter, angry, racist asshole, that there was no humor left in his program towards the end. It was just a constant rant.
Yeah,
and the only people...
The danger there was that he had an intellect and he abused it in such a way. And those are the most dangerous people when they have an amazing platform like that. He was a kingmaker. I mean, look, he helped Trump. He helped all these other right wing racists, and he was popular among. I mean, look, WJR had him on for a long time back when WJR was really the big powerhouse station.
Yeah, he spawned all sorts of imitators too. People like Mark Levin, and
Alex Jones,
and now we've got this Ben Shapiro kid that's doing his thing, and it's.
And you know who's crying, really? Clarence Thomas, one of his best friends. He's probably saying, "Oh, we need to bury Rush at Arlington Cemetery. They want to give him a hero's funeral." This guy was the worst, but he took an industry and he perfected it. Paul Harvey was a right wing radio personality, but he didn't go so far as Rush Limbaugh did. He took that and he took all the ingredients and made it his. And hate radio been around a long time. All we have to do is pass the shrine of the little flower, and we see who started it.
Father Coughlin, and right here, right at 13 Mile and Woodward there, the shrine of the little flower.
I stopped a friend of mine. She was going to send her kid to shrine. And when I got through talking about the history of the shrine, she didn't walk away from it. She ran from it. She said, "I didn't know." I said, all you have to do is look him up. That's all.
Yeah.
Have they done anything though to mitigate that at all? I mean, that's one part of local history I really am just not.
I don't believe they have.
No? Okay. Yeah. I mean, it's not like Ford Motor Company, which has bent over backwards to kind of rectify Henry's anti-Semitism.
Listen, if you say we need to change the school's name, you have more black people come to the defense of Shrine than you would have white alumni. That's who goes to the school now. You got a large black student population, and it's just like Cass Tech when they talking about changing the name of areas in Detroit named after Cass. You had all these black Cass alumnus, black, saying, "Hey, we need to keep the name." So it is.
Yeah.
Well,
led by Diana Ross, I believe. Yeah.
But radio still has the power to influence people, and Rush did that as well as anybody ever has. Just unfortunately, it was for the wrong ends. We got a couple of comments that came in here. Steve basically just said that Rush helped create the toxic wasteland that we hear today on radio. And other than News Radio 950, I don't listen to radio because it is lifeless. That is, of course, what Steve had to say there. And, he's a guy who used to listen to me on DET. So there you go. 9:10 a.m.'s got some interesting programs on it. That's for sure, Steve. So check that out. Especially 10 to noon on Saturdays.
I was living in Fort Wayne, Indiana when Rush's show began. And that was one of the first stations to pick him up. And, he was a total unknown and the station owners were cheap as hell. And I'm sure they picked him up for a song. But anyway, so I'm listening to him one day. I think I listened to him for 5 minutes. I'd never heard the name before. He wasn't famous. And I said to myself, this is a fat guy who cannot score with chicks.
Yeah, absolutely correct. Yeah.
I was right.
Yeah. High school kid.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Who hates women because they don't find him attractive.
Right. And there's nothing wrong with being a fat guy. And I love some fat guys, but I'm just saying that when it metastasizes into that curdling hatred of women, which he kept through his entire life. Keep in mind, this guy was married 4 times. Wow. That tells you something.
Yeah, it's amazing that you can get rich on a steady diet of hate.
Well, you know what they say.
If you feed red meat to the beast, it's beyond bothersome.
Yeah, he had a blueprint. And it came out of the result of the South losing the Civil War, and he had a blueprint. And when they disenfranchised black people during the Reconstruction, listen, it was acceptable in this country. The Supreme Court made it illegal. So Rush had a blueprint. He read it. He memorized it and he perfected it. I'll give him credit for it.
Sean Hannity has taken the same formula, really, and just turned it into,
him and Tucker.
The idiocy of listening to these guys. It's just, and they know that they're the jerk factor. The higher the jerk factor, the more popular they are.
Then that explains my ratings in public radio then. Because
you're too decent, damn it.
There you go. I do want to let's move on here because Rush Limbaugh is now in the dustbin of history.
Assuming room temperature, as he likes to say.
Oh God. That's a really unfortunate vision. Let's just to show that we are equal opportunity when it comes to criticizing people. Andrew Cuomo in New York, of course, Democratic governor of New York, in a little bit of trouble these days for fabricating numbers of deaths in nursing homes, which is bad, and getting caught for it, and then trying to basically bully people into keeping quiet about this to the point where people said, I'm not going to keep quiet about it. I'm going to tell you the truth. Andrew Cuomo, who was the darling, right, at the beginning of this coronavirus pandemic, really, really screwed up here. And possibly is going to get recalled over this one.
He's dead. He's dead. Politically, he can't run for president because I think Democrats assume that Joe Biden is a one-term president. I think he is a one-term president. But people were saying he should get into the presidential race. He's doing a great job, et cetera, et cetera. Listen, the guy been playing with numbers. Whitmer need to cover her ass right now because there's people saying the same thing here in Michigan about her hiding those stats about folks dying in these nursing homes. Nursing homes is the Achilles heels of a lot of these states.
Look, Cuomo has a lot of baggage anyways before. I think that's why he may not have jumped in even before all this. He was hesitant to get into the race. It was his for the asking, really. They didn't have anyone. Biden was thinking, and I think he's got a history in New York. I mean, he's abrasive. He's up until now, suddenly he became sort of a comforting figure in the pandemic, but he's had a long history of being very abrasive and combative with a lot of the figures in New York.
I watched his, daily, when the pandemic first came out, Trump's, press conferences were absurd, right?
Sure.
But Cuomo's were organized, they were educational, they were informative. I never had really known much about Cuomo. I was taken by it.
Yeah.
I mean, he did a great job presenting, and it's sad that he has feet to play like most other politicians do, and it was less than forthcoming with the truth, which again I think is endemic to the profession that he's in.
Well, it's always the cover up. It's always the cover up. I mean, how come these guys never figure this stuff out?
Well,
now,
there's also a little more context we need to consider here. I mean, if you have any right wingers in your social networks, or if you follow their media, you know that this is their number one thing that they're gunning for Gretchen Whitmer over. Is she put the COVID people back in the nursing homes, but they never answered the question. Well, where else were some of these people supposed to go? I mean, these weren't people who had families that could take them in. I mean, where were the people who were recovering from COVID, who lived in nursing homes? Where were they supposed to go?
Yeah, what was the alternative?
And there were some guidelines for how to reintroduce these people back into the population. There were some pretty strict guidelines here in Michigan. But the one thing that we didn't see here in Michigan is anybody fudging the numbers.
No, that's very true. That's
the part that's bad, fudging the numbers. And if somebody on high told you to fudge those numbers, then that's a real problem, because the fact is people understood how dangerous this thing was. You didn't have to lie about this. No. And that's where the problem is for a guy like Cuomo. When CNN basically just said to his brother, sorry, you can't have your brother on the show anymore. He's no longer welcome on CNN. Yeah. That's interesting to me. I mean,
now we got two governors of the two largest states in this country, Democrats, that's under fire and might get recalled.
Yeah. And don't be surprised if I know there's already a movement about Newsom in California, and the Cuomo petitions are starting right now as well. I wouldn't be shocked if I saw somebody going after Abbott pretty soon too. And DeSantis has got some detractors in Florida. So the four biggest states in the union potentially all have gubernatorial issues right now, which is not good for the stability of the nation. But hey, rolling blackouts will do that to you, and lying about numbers of people dying is also a really, really bad way to govern. All right, let's talk about governing for just a second. Joe Biden, Adolph just hinted that he could only be a one-term president. He seems to be wanting to do a lot of stuff in this term, and politics be damned, push some things through. He just talked about immigration reform, which it's not quite the third rail, but it certainly is the third and a half rail in this country politically. It's almost impossible to get something comprehensive done on this issue. Is this something where he's actually going to be able to get something really done, or is this going to die as it has so many times in the past and take the president potentially with him? Who wants to answer that question? Immigration.
I think immigration is going to be, obviously, it's going to be extremely difficult to get any legislation through. Republicans are hell bent on any immigration reform that has any meaning or any help to those who certainly deserve to be in this country. I think Biden's plan is fine, but I just don't see that happening.
I got an idea. Send ICE to Mar-a-Lago and get Trump's in-laws and his wife and send them back to Europe. Then you might get some reform.
Is Melania
naturalized, though?
Yeah, wow.
But the bottom line is that is going to be tough. and the Republicans rather die
Yeah.
than do any kind of reform when it comes to keeping people in the country, the Dream program, etc.
The dreamers are the ones that absolutely have to be saved. I mean, number one, they're a valuable talent asset to this country, and they're totally blameless. I mean, when you're brought to this country as a toddler on your mother's hip, I'm really offended by people referring to them as like illegal aliens. I mean, some of these folks don't even speak the language of their alleged home country, and the idea of sending them back, it's just that was true Stephen Miller Trump administration cruelty.
But it's a reflection of the underlying racist policies that party holds and holds dear, and isn't going to relinquish anytime soon.
Exactly.
It's just like sending this this guy back to Hades. He wasn't even born in Hades. He was born in St. Martin of Haitian parents. They sent him back. They deported him to Hades. He'd never been there. He doesn't speak French, Creole, or any other languages. And here he is sitting in Port-au-Prince, knowing no one.
In the most screwed up country in the Western Hemisphere, so.
Well, it's interesting. Let's slide over here because Joel just mentioned something that I wanted to talk tangentially about here, but that was sort of like the views of the Republican Party. And as Donald Trump lost the election, yes, he really did lose the election, everybody. We are seeing a battle for who's going to have the voice in that party. Is it going to be still Trump's thing? He broke his silence yesterday or a couple days ago by appearing on OAN and I think he was on Newsmax as well and Fox News. First words he said since leaving the White House. And of course, one of the first things that he has done in the last couple of days is attack Nikki Haley, who we talked about last week as being critical of Donald Trump, saying that we shouldn't have followed this guy down this road. So the battle is starting already. I don't see any room for like the Mitt Romneys of the world in this current Republican Party.
I put my money on Nikki Haley.
Yeah. I mean, but is that just going to be Trumpism light? Because I mean, she's not going to be as overtly racist as Donald Trump was. I mean, considering the fact that she is, from her parents were immigrants to this country. She's part Indian. You can't really see her railing against brown people as effectively as Donald Trump probably could. But I mean, where does this come down? I don't see how you separate out what we've seen for the last few years from where they want to go in the future.
I think she's potentially the darling, the future darling of the party. I think I think if things start going well, if the pandemic suddenly dies down, the economy comes back, I think people are going to be like, wow, less stress. I mean, we don't even know some days that Joe Biden is president. I mean, we never forgot for a moment that Trump was, and I think people might realize and look back and go, wow, that was exhausting. I think in the same way that the Clintons, Bill Clinton, I think a lot of, Democrats thought Bill Clinton did a really good job as president, but when he was gone, they were like, wow, that was exhausting. That was really just a lot of drama going on.
But to Craig's question, it's like McConnell Republicans versus Trump. Is that what's happening now, right? McConnell v. Trump.
Oh yeah, he went after McConnell too. That's right, he did. Yeah.
Right. I think Trump's going to win that battle. I mean, the people. It's an allegiance. It's been like this from day one. It's a cult of personality, and there's an allegiance to the person, which is anti-democratic, quite frankly. At the expense of everything else. So I think the Republican Party is in a schism. I'm not sure if there'll be a breakoff, but again, you have the McConnell Romney Republicans versus the Trump Lindsey Graham, God knows what Republicans. I don't even
know. You can't put Lindsey in there because Lindsey's going to go wherever the power is.
Look at what happened with the Democratic Party in the 40s. The Dixiecrats hated the regular Democratic Party, and it took them almost 20 years, but they decided there was no home for them in the Democratic Party, and all of them left. And they moved over to the Republicans. They hijacked the Republican Party. Strom Thurmond, Jesse Helms, all these was card-carrying Democrats. But they hated black people so much They supported lynchings. They supported bogus trials for black folks, and they said they had enough of the Democratic Party, and they left. And I think sooner or later, the Mitt Romneys and the rest of those folks who have some kind of decency about them, they're gonna have to leave the Republican Party because Trump hijacked it, and he got it.
Right.
It's his.
Absolutely correct.
Trump took on, in the very beginning when he took on John McCain, and he said, I like my heroes, don't get caught, whatever. I think he even thought like, oh my gosh, he's done with it. He's taken on, one of the established, really, figures in the party, and he won that. But I don't know that he can continue to do that. We'll see. I mean, look, he knocked out during the primary in 2016. He knocked out all the establishment candidates.
History is going to repeat itself. Strom Thurmond ran for president in 1948. He was the reason Harry Truman got back in, because Harry Truman was dead in the water. The bottom line is that the Republicans are just as split. I don't know what you would call the Donald Trump, but we call them Dixiecrats because they were white supremacists, Ku Klux Klan members, etc. Don't that sound familiar? You got the Proud Boys, the Oath Keepers, and everybody else coming together under the Republican Party. Unbelievable.
Well, and I think a little light, Adolph, is going to be shed on those groups because it looks like we're going to get a 9/11 style commission to investigate what happened on January 6th at the Capitol, the insurrection at the Capitol. And for the first time, we're going to have a public airing about the real beliefs of all these groups, what they do, what they represent, and what motivates them to do the dumb stuff that they do. It's not that different than what the KKK was doing and what all these people were doing.
I went to the lynching museum in Montgomery, Alabama. Unbelievable. You had thousands of people sitting around watching 3 or 4 people burned. Cutting off their ears, their testicles, and everything else. And this was America. These are the hate groups that thrived in this country for 300 years, and it's still happening. I'm telling you, now they're legit. They are legit, just like the Klan was legit. You had governors, etc.
A little sunshine on them, though, is not going to be a bad thing, because I think once a lot of people see what these groups are really about, and it's not just these are not patriots.
No.
This is 74 million people voted for Trump.
Yeah, it depends who gives that definition. Trump sees them as patriots. They see themselves as patriots. I don't see them as patriots. You don't see them as patriots, but they see themselves as the truest patriots that exist. They see that the nation is a white Christian nation, and that they're doing the Lord's salvation, the work by keeping it as such. It's absolutely terrifying. And the playbook, again, you're right. The playbook is an easy one to understand. Trump's playbook is the Hitler playbook, right? It's the German propaganda playbook. The playbook's easy. If you're willing to effectuate it and have the charismatic ability to capture people's attention.
But do you see, though, the possibility that these hearings and the report that comes out of this could educate some people in this country about what's really going on? Because there have been a lot of people that have wanted to put their head in the sand, especially a lot of these Trump supporters. You mentioned 73 million who are just sort of like, okay, that stuff's going on over there, but those are just the wackos. I think people need to see just how widespread this is.
I think that's
real widespread. Go ahead.
I think that's a good point, because I think there's so much news and information in this country, and we forget that not everybody pays as close attention to it as the 5 of us do, and Steve Fishman and all the other people who appear on the show. I mean, there are an awful lot of people who just don't have time. And I think a lot of those 73 million who voted for Trump, a lot of them were, they were because my 401k is done well, or because I don't believe in business regulation, or, the usual boilerplate that's been around forever. And you're alone in the voting booth. We have a secret ballot in this country, and maybe there are more people out there who really don't care about racism and, and bigotry and everything else, or can self-justify themselves out one way or the other. But Adolph is right. I think this is a party that is in deep schism, and it's going to be fought out, I think, at the state level over the next few years. And by the time the next big national election rolls around, we'll get a better sense of it.
Well,
Listen, we got Kyle Rittenhouse walking around, taking pictures with the Proud Boys, enjoying himself. He murdered 2 people, and the police just let him walk by with his weapon. It's like a pat on the back. You had Hollywood actors raising money and paying for a bail.
Not many of them.
This guy is out on bail. And you come into Detroit and you see people locked up in the Wayne County Jail for shit less than that.
Oh, absolutely.
Well, we have some work to do.
We just had a guy that get out of prison after 16 years because the police lied and the prosecutor office held back evidence. And this is what.
Well, okay, we've only got we got a few minutes left, and we definitely need time for Schmuck of the Week a little bit later on. But I do want to talk about Senate Majority Leader Mike Shirkey. This is a guy, of course, we talked last week about him getting caught on tape saying dumb things about the election, basically agreeing with the quote-unquote big lie that somehow this election was stolen. And then he goes out this week and says that dead people voted in Michigan. And it's just, he cannot help himself right now. It's like he needs to just step back, shut up, or else he's going to find himself out of a leadership position pretty soon.
I am so tired of these alleged decent Republicans who are still going around spreading outright goddamn lies about this election. And it's like, okay, you saved face, you lost, you feel like you want to blame somebody else. But that is irresponsible. And we are going to be reaping this rancid fruit for years because of this bullshit. Excuse my language, but that's it.
It's okay. Go ahead, Allan. You were saying.
Well, there's still plenty of Republicans who believe that, the hardcore believe that the election was stolen. And so he's pandering to that group. You go to Hillsdale College, which is just a bastion of absurdity. The president there. I used to try to engage the president, but somehow I got on the email list, try to engage him at some point. He never responded to me, but they people like Shirkey go out there and they pander to the group for what they want to hear. It's just they don't want to hear the truth. They just want to hear what they want to hear.
Yeah, but until the truth appeals to people or people are willing to accept it, they're going to keep benefiting from lies. If lying pays and pandering pays, Shirkey's going to keep doing what he's doing. It's only when the voter says it's enough. If this post-truth society we live in, this world we live in, it's got to stop.
But certain people are pushing back against this a little bit, and I don't know the backstory. This is very insider baseball stuff here, people. But Amber McCann, who was the chief of staff and communications director for the Senate Majority Leader, for Mike Shirkey, and the previous 2 Senate Majority Leaders on the Republican Party, just jumped ship to go work for Dana Nessel in the Attorney General's office.
And
so is that an example of a person saying, "I'm done with this. I'm just going to go to the light," or did she just get a decent, bump in pay or something? I don't know. I don't know the backstory yet.
All above.
I agree with you.
Obviously, if Kelly Rossman McKinney, who is a PR professional here in the state and has been for a long time, brought her on to work for Dana Nessel, she's obviously got some skills. She knows everybody in Lansing, so it's probably a very good hire. But you just don't see that happen very often, where somebody just says, "I'm out and I'm going to work for Dana Nessel," who I guarantee you the right looks at her like, she's worse than AOC in a lot of people's minds in Michigan.
It's not like she went to work for Whitmer or Jocelyn Benson, but for Dana Nessel.
Exactly.
That is hysterical.
And like I said, that is very insider baseball sort of stuff for those of us in the press that deal with these people. But it was a shock to me when I saw that announcement that came down yesterday. And it tells me that Shirkey may have some bigger problems than he realizes. When staffers start bailing, they recognize that maybe your time is short. Yeah. And so, and look, you're starting to see chambers of commerce around the state saying, maybe this isn't the guy that we want in charge of the Michigan Senate right now. So I think the pressure's going to mount.
To his former counterpart in the House, Lee Chatfield, who every time I look at that guy's, totally unlined 32-year-old face, I can't believe he rose so far so fast. Well, some little hamlet in northern Michigan, and now he has this enormous paycheck. Running.
Term limits.
Oh, I know
term limits.
But Chatfield lands on his feet allegedly, in Kalamazoo for the chamber down there in Southwest Michigan. But the first thing that happened is Western Michigan University, which is by far the biggest employer in that region, said we're going to not be members anymore,
right?
Because we don't want this guy. Right. And now Chatfield's coming out saying, "Hey, if the chamber's in favor of LGBTQ equality, then I am too." Even though he worked against it his whole time at the Capitol. But I don't know what's going to happen there. And here's something I did notice: that job was actually posted still for the director of that little chamber. Wow. So maybe they're reconsidering there. I'm not sure.
I didn't see that on Glassdoor.
No, well, that's exactly where I saw it. So, it was kind of funny. They're like, "Hey, you want to lead the Kalamazoo Chamber?" I'm like, But anyway, so yeah,
it's heartening to see pushback for these guys who carried out such hateful policies, and finally the business community is pushing back on them. I think that's great.
And that is always the bellwether. I mean. Yeah. The mood on LGBT, rights in every area, from domestic partnership to marriage and everything, all that tide changed when corporations did, and corporations did because number one, they sell to LGBT customers and they need talent. They need the best talent in their organizations, and it's like if you're Apple Computer, that there is absolutely zero upside to not speaking out against that.
And people like Lee Chatfield, I always feel in society, there are people like him who hate who they're allowed to hate. When it's you can no longer be bigoted towards the gay community, then you have to stop. But you can still be bigoted against the Arabs, and then you can no longer be bigoted against the Arabs. I mean, they hate as far as they can hate publicly, before laws and norms push back.
Right.
Okay, well, we need to move on.
Okay.
And now, it's time for Deadline Detroit's nominees for Schmuck of the Week.
All right, it is time for Schmuck of the Week nominations. I've got a couple. So can I do one first and then move on to the other one later? Can I do that?
It's your show, buddy.
Right?
It is, I suppose. Okay, so I'm going to go first on this one because I was sort of torn. But I'm going to go with the guy whose name is Charles Venable. He is, of course, the head of a museum in Indianapolis, the director of the Speed Art Museum in Louisville. But he was at the Indianapolis Museum of Art. So apparently he's at Indy and has been for a while. But they had a job posting, and this is what bothered me. They had a job posting for somebody and said, here's what was in it. It said, we're seeking a director to, quote, attract a broader and more diverse audience while maintaining the museum's traditional core white art audience. And of course, he had to step down because the buck stops with whoever signed off on that job description. But I'm thinking to myself, I'm sorry, but is there a difference in terms of whether or not people like art or want to go to a museum? Or, I mean, if you automatically do something that maybe caters to an African-American audience, that automatically white people are going to not like it? I don't get the reasoning behind this. And it sounds very Indiana to me, Nancy, and this is your state.
Well, it was my state for a while. I'm a Buckeye by birth, or by
yeah, that's Indiana light when it comes to conservatism. But, go ahead.
Well, it didn't used to be. Anyway, it does sound very. What amazes me is how many sets of eyes had to look at that thing before it was actually posted and didn't raise a red flag. I mean, that to me is just mind-boggling, because all you had to say was, "We're seeking a more diverse audience," a good thing, while not alienating our core audience, and it's why did anybody feel the need to say white in there?
As we were saying before the show, it reminded me a lot of the popular music stations in the 80s and early 90s that would heighten. We've got all the popular music, but no rap.
But no,
that's the way they used to market these radio stations back in the day. We won't sully our station with that rap music.
Rap.
Don't worry, white people. You won't have to hear any black music on the station. I mean, that's just the mindset from 30 years ago that's still obviously on display here. It's not shocking. Mm-hmm. It's disappointing. But it just.
And Indianapolis is basically the New York City of Indiana. I mean, it's supposed to.
Well, my first experience with racism was in Indianapolis. When I was in the military, I was kicked out of a swimming pool because I was black. They called the police on me.
I'm not saying that isn't what it was like. I'm just saying as of today, Indianapolis is, it's the place to be. It's
the most enlightened part of Indiana.
Yeah, exactly. But that doesn't surprise me at all.
It has a long history of Klan activity where elected officials was open Klan members. So I'm not surprised.
There was you talk about the lynching museum. I think there's famous photography of a lynching in Marion, Indiana, well into the 20th century. So.
Okay, so who wants to go next with their schmuck?
I'll go next.
All right, Adolph, go ahead.
John James.
Again?
Again. He was so hurt that his people who he thought was his brothers and sisters called him the N-word while he was in Florida with his family. Get real, John James. I don't know what world you living in. Those are the racists and the bigots that you appeal to.
Correct. That's your party.
Yeah, and you wrap your arms around the biggest bigot in the world, Donald Trump.
Right.
So I don't feel bad for him.
No, man. I'll give you mine, but just because I hate him every time I see him, Lindsey Graham. Because every time I see him, I go, "What a schmuck!" So he is my schmuck of the week, the day. I just every time it just viscerally, it's like, God, he's such a putz.
Okay.
Yeah. No, that's fair. That's fair. I mean, he's always going to be there. He's always in the running. Nancy.
Well, I'm hoping that I'm sorry that I should have submitted this as a slide, but I'm hoping that this will get picked up. This is
Lauren Boebert.
This is Lauren Boebert, and I don't know if you can tell. This is Lauren Boebert on a official Zoom call, which I think was part of the. It was some kind of hearing in the House that she was a member of. This is her Zoom room. This is her Zoom view. If you can't quite tell what that is in the background, that is at least two assault rifles on the top shelf and what looks to be a shotgun of some sort on the bottom shelf. Wow. There's a handgun here. There's some other stuff. Basically, the worst. She has 4 children, I might add, too, living in her home. The worst possible gun storage you can imagine. I'm sure
the NRA does not recommend that storage.
No, I don't think they do. And I'm sure she put that up there just to, but just my little mini rant that I said I was going to give. We have forgotten, for 2 generations now, we have raised people who do not understand what politics is, okay? Politics is how we come together as a diverse society to solve our problems, or how am I going to get from Detroit to Lansing? Well, we're going to need a road. How are we going to build this road? How are we going to pay for it? That's what politics is supposed to be. And instead, now we have this freshman class with her and Marjorie Taylor Greene and God knows how many upperclassmen now who think that all politics is about is owning the libs. And dunking on the gun, the gun control people, and so you do stupid bullshit like this, and we wonder why everybody hates politicians.
Well, you know what, Nancy, you mentioned that she has 4 children, and with all that weaponry, I would say she has 4 very obedient children.
Yeah, that's one of those things where they're always like, the liberals are coming to take your guns, and for somebody like Lauren Boebert, I said, no, just yours.
I guess she forgot where Columbine was. That's her home state.
Yes, it is.
This woman is crazy. She submitted vouchers for getting paid over $20,000. She said she traveled 38,000 miles in a month in her state.
Right.
Don't you wonder, what that district must be like? Who votes for you? What is the competition there? What's going on there?
Especially Colorado, which has been blue. But I mean, it's like every state
depends how
now.
where you are in Colorado, though. If you're in ranching
It's
territory.
like Michigan. It's like every state.
The biggest city that she's around is Rifle,
Colorado.
And I think her restaurant, which caused food poisoning apparently, is called Shooters.
Shooters. There you go.
Well, Marjorie Taylor Greene ran against a brain surgeon in the
All right. So, okay, we're running out of time. Lengel, who's yours?
I'm going to go with Governor Cuomo. I really, Here's a guy, really. I mean, he was such a refreshing alternative in the beginning of the pandemic to Trump's just crazy, briefings, press briefings, and people, the whole nation turned to him, and for him to just undermine that was just trying to. Guys like that think they're just smarter than everybody else, and it catches up with them.
It certainly does. Third terms are always difficult too, man. That's when stuff starts catching up with you. All right. Well, I've got one more. And this one's for you, Adolph, because we are of the same mindset on this one. My schmuck of the week, my big nominee is a guy named Tim Boyd, who is the mayor of Colorado City in Texas. As Texas is going through this, of course, this guy likes to, like I said, he thinks he's Davy Crockett. Here's what he put on Twitter. It says, "Let me hurt some feelings while I have a minute. No one owes you or your family anything," instead of or, "nor is it the local government's responsibility to support you during trying times like this. Sink or swim, it's your choice. The city and county, along with power providers or any other service, owes you nothing. I'm sick and tired of people looking for a damn handout. If you don't have electricity, you step up and come up with a game plan to keep your family warm and safe. If you have no water, you deal without and think outside of the box to survive and supply water to your family. If you are sitting at home in the cold because you have no power and are sitting there waiting for someone to come rescue you because your lazy ass is the direct result of your raising. Only the strong will survive and the weak will perish." P-A-R-I-S-H. Folks, God has given us the tools to support ourselves in times like this. This is sadly a product of a socialist government where they feed people to believe that the few will work and others will become dependent for handouts. Wow. Am I sorry that you have been dealing without electricity and water? Yes, but I'll be damned if I'm going to provide for anyone that is capable of doing it themselves. We have lost sight of those in need and those that take advantage of the system and mesh them into one group. Bottom line, quit crying and looking for a handout. Get off your ass and take care of your own family. Bottom line, don't be a part of the problem. Be a part of the solution."
Does that guy have kids?
He is the former mayor of Colorado City, Texas. He was forced to resign.
Because I can just see him saying, "Kids, all right, we've reached a crisis point. It's time for us to start drinking our own pee."
Well, that's kind of what I was thinking, and I'm like, you know what? I'm sorry, dude. Have we become used to certain creature comforts? Yes. We don't live in Little House on the fucking Prairie anymore. Okay?
Well, and plus we pay utilities.
I mean, I'm sorry. I'm not Charles Ingalls. I am not Davy Crockett. I am not one of these. I'm not Grizzly Adams here.
Daniel Boone.
I pay for water. I pay for electricity. We pay for these things. And yes, they do owe us that service when we do pay for it. So I'm sorry. If it's not functioning, you get a refund. That's the way that it's supposed to work. Get it fixed as fast as possible. But I'm sorry. I'm not about to go out and start killing my own meals.
That's what the family dog is
recycling my urine so that my family doesn't, die of thirst.
Yeah.
Why did that guy run for mayor?
Exactly. If you don't want to be in government, you don't like government, don't be in government. This is one of my beefs for a long time. You hate government so much. Why are you so desperate to be a part of it? If you hate government so much and you don't think that anybody owes you anything, I'm sorry. You know what? Fire department, don't go fix that guy's house when it catches on fire. Police, don't service that guy. He should be able to handle it himself. I'm sure he's got the guns in his house, and he's probably got the doomsday prepper crap down in his basement as well. So let's see how long he holds out.
I'm just looking it up on the map. Colorado City. It doesn't really.
It's in the middle of nowhere. It's scrub country over near Odessa.
Yeah, it's near. Oh yeah, Odessa. It's just south of it's kind of
Midland, Odessa area, that kind of stuff. There's not a lot around there, but either way, that's my real schmuck of the week. And of course, the guy resigned as he should have, because I'm sorry. You know what? We don't need more assholes in politics. We have enough.
Well, he probably ran for governor now.
And he might win in Texas. You never know, because God forbid he can't do any worse than the people there now. He already said he's not going to do anything.
Lester Maddox owned a little hole in the wall restaurant, and he kept black people out of there with an axe. And people of Georgia rewarded him. He was the governor.
Scandal. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah. So no, I wouldn't be surprised.
Well, those are our nominees for Schmuck of the Week. Feel free to leave comments as to who your nominees should be and which of us made the most compelling case this time around. I mean, I'm going to give Joel some votes just because Lindsey Graham's up there every single week and deserves to be. So,
we may need like a pageant crown to go with this.
Well, I'm thinking of redesigning the trophy we have in the graphic because make it like the Stanley Cup. so that we can have the past winners, like sort of like a totem pole of schmucks.
Good idea.
So we'll come up with some new graphic here. All right, I got to say thank you to my guest today, Adolph Mongo. We appreciate you being here, and you will be on tomorrow from 10 to noon on AM 910. What are you talking about tomorrow?
All the schmucks of the week.
There you
and
go.
the month, Rush, and Black History Month. We've been talking about that every week, and yeah, we got a lot of people that like to chime in, and they talk about everything. So,
all right, beautiful. Well, we'll be listening tomorrow. We appreciate you being with us today, Joel Sklar. Welcome back, sir.
It was great.
All right, thanks for being here, Nancy Derringer and Allan Lengel of Deadline Detroit. Thank you.
Thank you.
Also, quick thanks to Michael Lucido for engineering the broadcast today. I do appreciate that. And also thanks to Lynette's Shrimp House for sponsoring this program. And don't forget, for all your news needs, DeadlineDetroit.com. Become a member at Deadline Detroit, just $3 a month. Keep this little shop of not horrors, but good news going. DeadlineDetroit.com/membership. Check it out. Thanks, everybody. Have a great weekend. And
stay home safely.
The Craig Fahle Show on Deadline Detroit is made possible in part by Lynette's Shrimp House, located in Highland Park. It's Metro Detroit's premier destination, serving juicy fried shrimp, fish, and wings, alongside soul food sides and new additions to the menu, like turkey tacos and desserts. Located at 13548 Woodward in Highland Park, just north of the Davidson, Lynette's is open for takeaway, noon to 8 Tuesday and Thursday, noon to 10 p.m. Friday and Saturday, and noon to 5 p.m. on Sunday. Call now, get some Lynette's.